Relax, sit up.
Don't touch.
Ooh. Worried about your jacket? Is that it? I'll buy you one. What do you say?
Hi there, I'm Harvey Boarden.
Harvey Boarden, clean my car.
Someone could hurt you if you do that again, huh?
Are you that someone? I saw you get out of your big limo. Where did they really have to beg to pay for it? Did they commit fraud? The only nice thing I remember from college, Shawn, was seeing your damn father humiliate you everywhere. Really? Honestly?
We begin the movie with our protagonist, MacArthur, a young man who apparently has no direction and has recently arrived in New York. He has no family, no friends, and no permanent home. He survives by selling counterfeit merchandise on the streets, mainly t-shirts and cheap items, moving from corner to corner and trying to go unnoticed. While arranging his products, an elderly woman approaches and picks up 2 books. Mac explains that each one costs $20. But the old woman imposes her own price and walks away paying only half. Shortly after that, a young woman approaches, interested in one of the books, and at that moment a suspicious man appears and demands that Mac remove his merchandise. The young woman checks the book and discovers that it is a fake, so she asks him to return her money. At the same time, another man begins distracting him by asking about an item, and when Mac hears the police sirens, he tries to leave quickly, but 3 men approach him and try to steal his merchandise in a coordinated way. Mac defends himself and causes a commotion right in the middle of the street. Although he manages to knock down the 3 attackers, a 4th man appears and snatches the money. Mac tries to chase him but trips over a man who delays him, and to avoid being arrested by the police, Mac runs away and hides in the subway bathrooms. With the little money he has left, Mac goes to the shop where he buys the merchandise and purchases a box full of umbrellas. Then he walks through the streets under heavy rain, and during the trip he runs into the man who had stopped him earlier, who is now talking with the thief who stole his money. Mac immediately enters the restaurant and demands that he return it, and at that moment, he understands why that man had interfered. Harvey apologizes and explains that his friend has mental problems. He pulls out a stack of bills and Mac snatches it from him. Although he only takes the exact amount that had been stolen, Harvey apologizes again and asks him to sit down. He says he was impressed by the way Mac defended himself, admitting that he truly felt fear when he saw him fight back. But Mac decides to leave and Harvey begins following him, telling him that if he wants to make money, it would be worth talking to him. At that moment, several well-dressed men accidentally bump into Mac. Harvey helps him pick up his things and introduces himself in a friendly way. They share their names, and Harvey tells him that he could become his promoter for underground fights. He assures him that in a single night, he can earn up to $5,000. He explains that many small businesses survive that way, claims to know most of the well-dressed men who move around in luxury cars because he finds talent for them while they control the bets in the city. Then he approaches one of them, greets him, and asks him to give them a ride, which the driver finally agrees to. The next morning they meet at an agreed place, and Harvey gives him a coat to improve his image. He explains that image is a person's calling card and that they must make a good impression. Then they approach 2 fight organizers and Harvey assures them that Mac is a great fighter, mentioning the street fight and emphasizing that he knocked out 3 men in less than 5 minutes. The organizers reply that they will keep him in mind and will contact him if they become interested. Hours later, Mac receives a message informing him that he has secured a fight. In that match, the winner will take $5,000. When he meets with Harvey, he introduces him to his group of thugs, who turn out to be the same men who tried to rob him in the subway. When traveling to Brooklyn, they enter a house full of gamblers. His rival is an experienced fighter, undefeated in 3 matches. Mac stands in the center, and the fight begins without any kind of intermediary. He receives a direct punch to the jaw and falls to the ground. He manages to get free and tries to throw a series of punches, but his opponent counterattacks and knocks him down again. Seeing that Mac cannot land any punch, Harvey begins to get nervous. However, in an unexpected moment, Mac runs toward his rival with all his strength and rams him against a drinking fountain, causing him to lose consciousness from the impact. After the fight, one of the organizers approaches and hands them a card. They say they are interested in having Mac become part of the club and explain that the fights will continue in another neighborhood because they are already tired of Brooklyn. Once inside the club, another talent scout named Martinez approaches to greet Mac. It quickly becomes clear that his intention is to propose that Mac become his fighter, but Harvey steps in first and makes it clear that they will be working together for quite a long time. He even tells him that he has already secured a new fight for Mac. Martinez replies that he knows the next rival very well and clarifies that the winner will take $10,000, a number that immediately catches Mac's attention. Right at that moment, Mac recognizes among the crowd the young woman who had bought the book from him earlier in the subway. He decides to approach her and speak more calmly, apologizing for what happened and explaining that it was never his intention to cause her problems, and as a form of compensation, he offers to invite her to dinner. Zuli replies that she does not have time and that he does not need to apologize, but she makes it clear that she might accept the invitation another day, leaving the conversation on good terms. When returning to the table, Mac runs into an old acquaintance. It is Evan Haley, a star fighter in the circuit, famous for his talent, but also for his arrogant and conflictive attitude. The conversation becomes uncomfortable when Martinez intervenes. Haley mentions that he has known Mac for years because he once worked for his father in Alabama, and in order to avoid problems, Mac decides to leave, but Haley stops him by touching him and demands that he stay. Mac reacts immediately and tells him not to touch him again. Noticing the tension, Harvey approaches and tries to calm the situation peacefully. But Haley humiliates him by throwing a tablecloth in his face and ordering him to go clean his vehicle. And faced with the provocation, Mac and Harvey decide to leave. Harvey asks if he knows him, and Mac explains that in the past he used to fight for Haley's father, and that Haley was always arrogant and problematic, a man used to imposing his authority. Later, in the early hours of the morning, Mac returns to the club and waits for Zuli to leave. When he finally manages to approach her, she quickly gets into a taxi, showing that she has no interest in socializing at that moment. Mac pays the ride in advance and asks the driver to take care of her. Zuli thanks him for the gesture, although she clarifies that it was not necessary, and she says goodbye with a certain distance. The next morning, Harvey finds Mac sleeping on a bench. They both joke about the situation, and Mac explains that he was exhausted. He had sat down for a moment and ended up falling asleep, and Harvey, seeing his situation, offers him a room where he can rest, assuring him that he can stay as long as he wants and that it will be much better than continuing to sleep on the street. Harvey takes him to his house and shows him the recently decorated room. Mac will be able to sleep on the couch, and during their conversation, Harvey tells him part of his story, explaining that when he first arrived in the city, he began selling tickets in the park together with Martinez and his friend Jack. The three arrived with the dream of becoming magnates. But over time, they ended up dedicating themselves to small scams. Even so, Harvey confesses that his real dream is to save enough money, become a professional soccer player, open a restaurant, and someday have an office with his name on the desk. On the way to his second fight, the group stops at a convenience store controlled by gangs. MacArthur locks eyes with his rival, and Harvey's companions explain that his nickname is the Kid. His physique is imposing, and he has earned respect through constant fights, to the point that almost no one dares to challenge him. Without exchanging words, both fighters get ready and the fight begins. The Kid corners Mac and tries to surprise him with a quick attack. But Mac stops him with a direct punch to the jaw, lands a kick, and begins beating him on the ground. When it seemed that he had the fight under control, the Kid manages to apply a hold and reverse the position. And seeing that Mac cannot free himself, Ajax intervenes by striking the Kid from behind. Filled with rage, the Kid chases Ajax and the fight spirals out of control, moving into the inside of the store. Unexpectedly, a gang member shoots Ray with a revolver. Apparently because he accidentally spilled her drink, the situation becomes chaotic until Harvey manages to take the weapon away and orders everyone to return to the car. Before leaving, he throws the revolver to the floor and shouts that he does not want any trouble. Some time later, Mac returns to the club with the intention of speaking with Zuli again. After insisting, she finally agrees, but she makes it clear that she only has 20 minutes because she must return to work or she'll get into trouble with her bosses. When they arrive at the restaurant, Mac checks the menu and realizes that the prices are expensive. Not wanting to make her uncomfortable, he lies and tells her that he is not hungry. Then he asks about the little girl he saw in the car, and Zuli confesses that she is her daughter. The conversation does not flow naturally, and when he cannot find another topic, Mac stands up with the excuse of buying a stuffed toy for the girl. When they return to the topic of her daughter, Zuli receives a call from her boss. Because of this, she is forced to leave immediately without even tasting the food, leaving the date unfinished. Later, back at Harvey's house, he informs Mac that he has arranged a new fight for him. However, he warns him that it will be almost impossible to win, since his rival is a professional fighter with an undefeated streak. Even so, he assures him that they will make a good amount of money, and Mac firmly replies that he'll do everything possible to win, and that the only way to defeat him will be by knocking him out. Harvey insists that this fight will be different from the previous ones. He explains that the earlier rivals were good, but that now he will face someone from another level, and in the middle of the conversation, Mac mentions that Martinez spoke with him and said that if he fought for his team, he would have many opportunities. When he hears this, Harvey becomes furious, accusing him of being ungrateful and reminding him that he gave him a place to stay. He accuses him of threatening him and immediately orders him to gather his things and leave at once, refusing to listen to any more explanations. A few minutes later, Harvey sees Mac sitting on the stairs and decides to approach him. With a calmer tone, he confesses that in the past Martinez broke his leg for only $100, destroying his dream of becoming a professional soccer player. At that time, Harvey was very good and had a promising future, but everything collapsed because of that betrayal and for such a miserable amount. Finally, he returns to the subject of the upcoming fight and reveals that if Mac manages to win, they will take $30,000, making it clear that this fight represents a unique opportunity for both of them. When the expected day arrives, the team heads to a peculiar place, a kind of Japanese temple where the bettors gather. Most of them are wealthy elderly men with several properties under their names. The atmosphere is solemn and silent, very different from the previous locations. Shortly after, Mac's rival appears, and the fight begins almost immediately without introductions or warnings. Dragon starts the fight with a series of fast and precise blows. Mac barely has time to react and is knocked down by a brutal right hook. Although he manages to break free, he falls again after receiving a powerful kick. Even so, he stands firm and manages to block the next attack, and in a sudden counterattack, he rams Dragon against a pillar and throws him to the ground. Mac takes advantage of the moment and begins hitting his jaw repeatedly, but Dragon manages to break free. Mac continues attacking in a frantic way until his rival lands a spinning kick that leaves him stunned. The situation becomes critical and Dragon begins to toy with his opponent, confident in his superiority, and that excess of confidence costs him dearly when Mac takes advantage of a distraction to bring him down. Once on the ground, Dragon tries to submit him with a hold, but Mac gathers all his strength, manages to lift him, and violently throws him against the floor. Immediately, he moves to restrain him and presses firmly until his rival loses consciousness. Without fully processing what just happened, Mac stands up while most of the bettors remain completely silent. Even Harvey stands frozen, unable to believe what he has just witnessed. To celebrate the unexpected victory, the team heads to a nightclub. However, Harvey seems strange and distant, and according to his own words, he feels exhausted. The week has been too complicated, and he only wants to get home to rest. Just as they are about to cross the entrance of the club, Haley suddenly appears, and when he sees Mac, he begins provoking him with contemptuous comments. He mocks him by saying that now he hangs out with Harvey's men, that he saw them getting out of a limousine, and that they probably begged for money to pay for it, or perhaps committed some kind of fraud. He continues humiliating him by remembering that the only pleasant thing he experienced in college was when his father used to ridicule him in front of everyone, until one day, he managed to knock him out in the middle of the gym. Fed up with the provocations, Mac lunges at Haley and tries to hit him. But the guards intervene in time and separate them before the situation gets out of control. Zuli notices the altercation and immediately approaches to calm Mac down, and to pull him away from the conflict, she invites him to her apartment. When they arrive, Mac notices a sheet with several overdue payments, which gives him an idea of the difficult financial situation Zuli is facing. When they enter the living room, her grandmother appears and looks at him with distrust, staring at him as if he were a criminal. She tells her granddaughter that she does not like bringing strangers into the house, and that judging by the bruises on his face, he looks like a troublesome drifter. Zuli asks her to return to bed and explains that he is only a colleague she invited to dinner. After a few minutes, when she notices Mac's kindness, the old woman changes her attitude and even offers to fix his shirt. Later, Mac offers to help her pay the overdue months. For a moment, Zuli remains silent, visibly uncomfortable, and decides to change the subject. She asks him about Haley since she has heard his name in several places and knows that he is a professional boxer. Mac tells her that he is coming from a recent fight, that he faced a professional but in underground fights, admitting that he has been lucky, that it has not been easy, but he has come out victorious in all of them. Zuli confesses that she likes his presence and offers to sew his shirt. To prevent her grandmother from seeing them, she takes him outside, and just when they are about to kiss, the old woman appears and tells them that it has been enough, that it is time for Mac to leave. Zuli accompanies her grandmother back to the room and then returns to apologize to Mac, proposing that they have a third date, one where they can have a little more privacy. When he returns to Harvey's house, he seems distant and strange. He only hands him $10,000, telling him that the next day they will talk about the rest of the payment. Mac, happy about the progress with Zuli, tells him that the girl he likes invited him to her apartment and that he even met her daughter and her grandmother. And when he hears Zuli's name, Harvey remains silent and walks away without saying a word. Meanwhile, Zuli searches Mac's name on the internet and finds the news about his past. She discovers that he was suspended from the university after fighting with his father during a school tournament. He was about to win the title, but he was disqualified and Haley ended up taking the championship. The next morning, Harvey arrives at the club looking for Zuli. It is revealed that they had a relationship in the past. Dominated by jealousy, Harvey confronts her and reproaches her for what she did with his fighter, telling her that she barely knows him and already took him to her bed, that she even introduced him to her daughter, and he accuses her of using him to pay her bills, assuring her that Mac is no different from the others, that when he wants to leave, he will abandon them, and that she must stop believing in fairy tales. Hours later, Harvey meets with the organizers who inform him that they have a special fight for his fighter. Completely different from the previous ones, the winner will take $100,000 and the opponent will be Haley. They plan to take advantage of the rivalry they have carried since school because a lot of money will be at stake. Excited about the opportunity, Harvey returns home and asks Mac to go for a walk with him. During the walk, he tells him about the fight and says that he will bet all his money against him. When he hears this, Mac becomes furious and makes it clear that he will not let himself lose, that he has never even considered that option. Harvey tries to convince him by explaining that they will earn much more than the prize of the fight. Mac pushes him and Harvey asks if he plans to hit him like he did with his father. Mac immediately apologizes, but demands that he never mention that again. Later, Mac goes to Zuli's apartment to give her money and help her with the rent. She thanks him but insists that it is not necessary. Mac keeps insisting, saying that he is doing it for her daughter, and finally, he opens his heart and confesses his love to her. They kiss, and the scene ends moving to the bed. The next day, Zuli tells him that she found the news about his past. Mac opens up and explains that on that day he lost control, that he had accumulated many frustrations. His father always preferred Haley, gave him more attention in training, and since he was the youngest, people used to mock him. During the fight with Haley, his father intervened and Mac hit him accidentally. Then he continued hitting him on the ground, admitting that he acted badly and that he understands why his father never forgave him. At that moment, Zuli receives several calls from Harvey. She lies, saying that it is her boss and that she must show up immediately. She changes quickly, and when she goes out, they run into Harvey. Both men look uncomfortable. Zuli tries to explain that they know each other, but Harvey speaks over her. Mac asks him to let her talk, but Harvey keeps interrupting, which makes Mac angry. Finally, Harvey states that Zuli works for him, that nobody knows that they know each other, and that she only sets up stands for his fights. Nothing more. Hours later, Mac returns to the house to talk with Harvey. He tells him that he has thought about the fight and that he will let himself lose, but he demands 50% of the profits. Harvey accepts, assuring him that he has made the best decision. although he warns him that if he changes his mind, both of them will be killed because they are dealing with very powerful people. Mac answers that he is not afraid. He will lose the fight, and when everything is over, he will leave the city, and they will never hear from him again. In the following scenes, Harvey is seen meeting with the bettors. The brothers hand him a briefcase with $250,000, while Martinez gives him another one with the same amount, making it clear that if for any reason his fighter wins, they will both be dead. After counting the money, Harvey calls Zuli so she can deliver the payment. She appears, takes the briefcase, and leaves without exchanging words with Mac. Then she meets with Jack and hands him the briefcase with $500,000, explaining that the investors had decided to remain anonymous because they do not want to be involved in that kind of fights. When the long-awaited day arrives, the team heads to the indicated location, a kind of hotel under construction. The fight will take place on the rooftop. In a tense atmosphere full of expectation, Harvey tries to advise Mac and give him some last-minute instructions, but Mac interrupts him, making it clear that he does not want to talk and only wants everything to end once and for all. After a brief introduction of the opponents, Haley begins provoking him again, mentioning his father and trying to push him out of control. Mac throws himself into the attack with all his strength and manages to knock him down. Haley stands up furious and responds with violence, punishing him without mercy, knocking over a table, cornering him against the wall, and delivering a barrage of punches directly to his face while Mac keeps his guard low. Haley tries to submit him, and the fight moves into the inside of the building. Both struggle on the ground, and Haley manages to apply a hold that seems final. However, at the last moment, Mac manages to break free. Filled with contained rage, he begins hitting him without stopping until he leaves him completely knocked out. Ajax and the rest of the group approach to congratulate him. Celebrating the victory, Harvey, however, remains motionless and paralyzed by what happened. Before leaving, Martinez approaches, shakes Harvey's hand, and makes it clear that his fate has already been sealed. The next morning, Harvey gives Mac his share of the money. With complete honesty, he confesses that deep down he always wanted him to win, telling him that if he were not a dead man, he would truly be happy about his victory, but that with his decision he is signed a sentence, and he warns him that the hitmen could arrive at any moment, so it is best for him to leave immediately. Unexpectedly, Mac reveals that he spoke with Zuli before handing over the briefcase with the $500,000. In the end, they decided to bet in his favor. He leaves a bag on the table and tells him that there is $1 million inside. With that money, he can pay his debt to the mafia and still have a good amount left to live peacefully. Mac explains that he will move together with his girlfriend's family, that they already have the tickets ready, that he plans to visit his own family and take a vacation in Chicago. And he even proposes that Harvey join them. Harvey smiles and replies that he likes the idea, saying that in fact he knows some very good places to vacation. Finally, with everyone traveling toward Chicago, the movie reaches its end.